You have made being an ally and fighting for social injustice a part of your life and career, which includes sharing Black stories, such as those shared in Black Boys. So, when did this passion for activism start?
I think my passion for activism has been there probably most of my life. I mean, definitely high school. I was sort of the generation that kind of came of political consciousness during September 11th. And so for me, that started a really big interest in actually international issues. And I studied, the Middle East and all of these different things during undergrad and graduate school, and I actually was really, really passionate about women's rights. And so I've done a lot of different things in my career, but specifically sort of racial justice, kind of that was probably about maybe 5 or 6 years ago is when I started working for a nonprofit that did education work. And I'd been very fixated on all these sort of global injustices. And all of a sudden I started looking at our own education system, and it was extremely eye-opening to recognize how just sort of, the egregious, essentially human rights violations that happen here every single day. And I'd been, like I said, really focused on this outside, and suddenly I was like, oh my God, my own community, my own backyard, it's really, really unbelievably unequal and unjust. And so that led to my first film, Teach Us All, about school segregation, and Black Boys is sort of a follow-up to that. So that has been probably about 5 or 6 years of fixated on this.
Yeah. Well, when it comes to film and media, it has been increasingly encouraged that Black people start to share our stories. We no longer want that narrative shaped and molded by others anymore. And we're seeing that more and more, like with Ava DuVernay, Jordan Peele, Issa Rae, and the list goes on. So how do you make sure the message is still received the way it should be, although the messenger is not of the community? How did you build that trust?
I mean, I think it goes to, like you said, my history of activism and working in this space. So I didn't become a filmmaker to make film. I actually became a filmmaker because I was an activist, and I saw that this medium is a really powerful way to, emotionally touch and hopefully inspire people. And so I was sort of, my first film came out of, again, working at a nonprofit. And so working directly with educators, directly in schools, it was a world I knew. What I didn't know how to do was make a film. I just sort of made that up. But, I knew how to work, in social causes. I knew how to build partnerships and coalitions. And so, a big part of Teach Us All was working directly with the organizations that are already doing the work, and just trying to uplift or highlight their stories. And similarly, with Black Boys, I was, partnered extremely early on with Chad Williamson, one of the producers, and same thing. I mean, background in education, works with so many different, nonprofits and social justice organizations. And so we call it like a co-creation. Like, it wasn't, trying to tell the story or shape the narrative in any way. It was to listen and to just kind of reflect what we were hearing, but to listen really, really deeply to the people who are already doing the work and are already in the space.
Howard, in 2013, Keshawn Thompson popularized the concept of Black girl magic to celebrate our beauty, our power, and resilience that is often disregarded in society. And now there's been this new concept of Black boy joy that has been introduced. So what does that mean to you?
Well, I don't know what it means to me specifically, because I'm old, generationally.
For grown men too. We say Black
right?
joy for men too.
I I think that generationally, I was having a conversation with a friend of mine about this just a couple of days ago, about where we are in this country, and certainly where we are post George Floyd, and certainly where we are now when you're starting to look at who tells your stories and inclusion and expectation and all of these different things. And one of the areas that I've always found sort of fascinating, and it's heightened now, is how do you reach a level of equality when you don't have population equality, when you don't have volume? We're 13% of the population, but we're not 13% of the culture. So what does equality look like when you're a physical numeric minority, right? You don't, unless you're in Baltimore or DC or Detroit, some of those areas, you just don't have the raw numbers to sort of take what you want. And even if you do, you have to deal with a state type of government where you get thwarted that way. So we've seen some of these different areas. So for my generation, we were taught access, but we weren't taught equality. This generation, these kids today, they're taught access and equality. They're taught we have a right to this. Whereas when we were kids, our parents told us, don't expect anything from them. They're not going to give you anything. You're not going to get anything. You get your space. What we're asking for is that you have an opportunity to learn, but don't expect anything close to equality. So I think that there's a lot of value in a film like this, and I think there's a lot of value in these types of conversations, because what you're also doing is you're getting access, equality, and humanity. You're getting all of the things that we're supposed to get. And our tough love generation was pretty much told you weren't getting that. You weren't going to get the other two. You got the access, but you were going to get the equality and the love and the humanity. You get that from your own community. And so I think that what this type of film does, and I think what these conversations do, and I think what a lot of the different sort of ideas and language, what they're doing is they're demanding a certain level of humanity that is going to, or that the hope is, that it translates into different behavior, that these encounters when it comes to jobs and police and access and discussion and all of these different things translate into treating each other better, and to make sure that it's not remarkable that somebody Black takes care of their family, and that it's not, that all of these stereotypes and these things start to go away, and it's not a remarkable thing to look at a Black girl and actually think she's pretty, right? I mean, these standards of beauty and all of this stuff, it is a fascinating moment in time for all of these different conversations as they coalesce, because suddenly we're realizing that they're not just Black issues, that this stuff affects everybody. And as it begins to manifest, you're starting to see the price of having not dealt with it all those years before.
Absolutely. It's inspiring, and also makes me feel extremely optimistic, because I think there is this new wave, especially for Black boys and men, feeling comfortable expressing their frustrations, anger, and pain. But I still do feel like there's this battle with expressing vulnerability and sadness, and also sharing that amongst each other. I think Black boys and men they want to keep this all to themselves. They're worried about how they'll come off. And so how do we get to this next level? I call it healing. So how do we get to this next level of healing where we're all comfortable sharing our stories, letting each other know we're not in this alone?
Well, I think that you do a lot of it through language and through your storytelling and through a sort of saturation of the culture of different images. If all you see are Black kids acting tough and always being tough, and even like when you watch a basketball game, when a guy makes a game-winning shot, he has to act like he can't smile, right? It's always tough. You always have to sort of mean mug everything. You're essentially telling everyone that it's not okay to be happy. It's not okay to cry. It's not okay to be vulnerable. It's not okay to share. And if you can produce different types of work that tell you that it's okay, then you'll see that it's okay. One of the issues that I always have with our storytelling in general is that the reason why you see these depictions of Black men and Black boys isn't because this is all we are. It's because this is what the people who tell the stories think we are. Yeah. And so there's a lot more to us than what you see. And so the question is, does anybody care? And is there an opportunity to show that there's more? And I think that this film does that. And hopefully what you get is you get a bigger picture, a broader picture, a better picture. And as we were saying earlier, I felt that, and we've talked about this before with Chad and Sonia at some level, that I feel that you don't want to make the unremarkable remarkable, but at the same time, you also have to show people that their stereotypes are incorrect. And so I think there's a sweetness to the film. There's a touching nature of, there's a humanity to it that is, once again, is unremarkable when you're in the community, but you don't see it on the screen that often. Normally you just see a bunch of Black kids always trying to act tough. There's more to us than that. I
personally love this documentary. I love that it's being put out there, the representation, but also just sharing unique stories of the Black experience. And so I just want to know what you guys are most proud of about this documentary.
I think there's a lot. I mean, there's so many things we could say, but actually I would like to touch on your question before, and it is connected to this. I think, this idea of showing, vulnerability, right? So you see, several of the men and boys that we spoke with were quite vulnerable in this film, and even more so than is shown. I mean, a lot of the interviews, most of the men and boys did cry in the interviews, and we show a little bit of that in the final edit. But each conversation was, very, very deep. They were extremely trusting and open and raw. And I think, so how do we, I guess, encourage that more? I mean, I think it's really up to people, especially white people, to just be willing to listen, to ask questions. I mean, several of especially the young men just said, nobody's ever asked me these questions before, like, especially not a white woman. A white woman's never shown interest in what I have to say about how I feel. And everybody wants to talk about, everybody wants to feel safe to be who they are and to show their emotions, everybody, me included. And so I think just even being willing to hold that space, to be willing to ask questions, and to be willing to really listen deeply. I mean, and that's something that, every human being could do better at. But I think when we talk about this subject, I mean, white people can ask questions and can listen. And I think, because the emotional vulnerability is right there. It's right under the surface. It's ready to come out, I mean, it's just that, they've been taught by white people to be so guarded. And it's, of course, I mean, it's so sad. And so I think we want to just, I think to answer your question, actually both questions, is one of the things we're proud about is that, we were so intentional to create room for those kinds of conversations. And we want to just be able to continue to, to listen, and to respect and to be really present, to allow Black men and boys to fully present, who they are and how they feel. And that was a whole team effort. I just want to say, I mean, everybody went into making that really intentional, and creating that possibility, to occur. So
I think for me, what I always look at is I take a little bit of a different view, obviously. I mean, I think I've reached a point, I really don't care what white people think of me. I really don't. You stop doing that the minute you sort of realize that it's more important of what you think of you. And I think that the real value to me was the African-American voice speaking to each other. And I think that to me is one of the things that is the value that I see in stories like this, is the commonality in the story, but also the license, the license that each person on screen says to another person on screen that you're good. You're all right to say how you feel. Speak your piece. Feel like there's no, when you talk about fear and you talk about why people are so guarded and why you're getting these sort of homogeneous one-dimensional type stories, it's because there's never been any license that you can be anything else. And so I think that one of the inspiring and powerful things in the film is that you see a lot of Black people from totally different backgrounds, from all different places, different ages, different generations, and all of them feel empowered to say something. And I think if you have that, you have a successful film. And I think if you can do that and apply it, then you can actually create something different from what we all grew up with.